In this video, I'm going to go specifically through how I worked with a CPA firm to add over $100,000 in profit within a year without adding any additional headcount or adding anything onto the CPA's plate. Now, if you're a CPA, you know these struggles that you have not only with clients, but time management, even your own self-doubt. Time is constantly fleeting you and you're putting out fires. You know that you're able to juggle so many things at once between client demands, business demands, and even employee needs, but really adding another thing on your plate is just going to be absolute overload. You know that hiring that additional person to then take things off your plate sometimes works, and you also know sometimes it absolutely does not work. There's a chance that you also think that the only people that you need to hire are just more tax accountants, and that's also not the case. So how can you go about adding an additional $100,000 in profit into your business without adding anything onto your plate or hiring additional people? If you have a tax strategy practice within your firm, you know how vital it is to be able to have these types of conversations, the top line revenue, and the experience to help fulfill this type of service. One thing that you're probably experiencing in your firm are clients are not as willing to pay for some of these services. They definitely want it and are curious about it, but ultimately don't feel they may need it or they don't want to pay for it. Now, this partially goes into having your ideal clients within your company, but specifically, if you're able to give not only tax strategy advice to the clients that you serve, but you're also able to give them the actual investments that help offset taxes and help them build wealth, that's really going to be the game changer comparing you to every other CPA firm. The biggest thing that I hear when I talk to CPA firms is ultimately the rates that they charge, the value that they perceive they give, and ultimately the clients that receive that value and if they're willing to pay for it. There's statistics out there that say over 30% of individuals who have over $1 million in net worth do not have a financial advisor. So ultimately, they are thinking of themselves as that fiduciary and ultimately look to you to help manage and keep their money. Now, if you don't yet have a tax strategy business, there's certainly ways to implement this. And ultimately, if you have a tax strategy business, this is breaking it to the next level. So I'm going to go through 3 specific ways of how you can go about doing this. The first step is going to be through compliance and ensuring that you abide by SEC as well as FINRA guidelines in terms of securities and opportunities for investments. The investments that are traditionally used in alternatives are oil and gas, real estate, heavy equipment, and a number of others that aren't typically done but can be. Now, compliance is both from a tax perspective as well as a financial legal perspective. And so Octane is ultimately built to help facilitate that for your firm to stay in compliance with those and with the relationship you have with your client. Step 2 is going to be on process. So how can you go about not just educating, but also introducing and suggesting different tax saving strategies that help your clients not just offset taxes, but also help them build wealth? That's specifically going to come through marketing material, organizational operations, as well as disclosures to ensure that you abide with compliance metrics. The third piece is access, and this is going to be access to the alternative investments that ultimately offset taxes and build wealth for your clients. So as a tax strategist, you ultimately give the types of opportunities that they could use. You're now able to go a step further and say, hey, within oil and gas and the ability to offset that high income salary or business profit, you can now invest in these types of companies. Here's some companies that we've done initial due diligence on, and I need to disclose to you that we would be compensated if you did work with one of them. And so it's up to you as our client to reach out to some of these companies and see if it's a fit for you. Through the compliance process and access method, your CPA firm can now give alternative investments and specific suggestions through disclosure so that your clients can ultimately be benefited far off and greater than other firms. Okay, so how tactically can this happen? Now, each operator has different procedures and processes for how they could potentially compensate you as a CPA and ensuring your CPA firm stays compliant to all legal restrictions. Now, in a specific case, a CPA was able to suggest several clients to a number of different operators, and those operators compensated that CPA for those names and referrals. That then led to over $100,000 worth of pure profit simply by doing what the CPA was already doing, suggesting not only the strategies, but now we're able to add some of the specific companies that would actually align with the strategies. Part of a CPA's challenge is ultimately staying between that compliance, investment, tax saving sort of realm. And so the ability to have compliance, keeping that process, and the access to alternative investments gives you, as a CPA firm owner, the ability to not just help service your clients and charge a more premium service that gives a higher level of service. There's two takeaways that we've seen with CPAs who've implemented this method. The first is being able to charge fees that more align into the type of service that they're offering. It's not just offsetting taxes, but you're also building wealth. And so the ability to have different levels of fees ultimately gives you, as the CPA firm owner, the ability to increase your bottom line. The second piece is simply just the differentiator that you have over other firms. We've seen how specifically firms with over 3 employees have been able to radically transform not just the services that they offer, the prices that they have for those services, but also the access to some of these alternatives to really ensure that their clients get the best service to offset taxes and build wealth. Along the way, you're probably going to have questions about how different deductions and tax codes fit within these different types of alternative investments. And that's ultimately why we have that within Octane to help facilitate this CPA method process, as well as some of that guidance and education. So ultimately, you as a CPA firm owner can not add more to your plate, don't have to hire additional individuals, and are ultimately able to increase the profitability for your firm without the headache. Octane is an application-only service that it only works with the top firms. So if your firm can benefit from this method and ultimately help the clients that you serve, you can apply below to see if you would be a good fit for this CPA method and the alternative investments that we have access to. Share below if there's comments about the process or the method that we've gone about using it and the case study that ultimately helped from changing the service fees as well as the compensation from that introduction. Until next time.